Bloomberg Audio Studios.
Podcasts, radio, news.
Valdis Dombrovskis is joining us now here in our Washington, D.C. studio on Bloomberg Television and Radio. He is the European Commission Executive Vice President for an economy that works for people. Sir, thank you so much for being here with us today. If we could first begin, given the developments overnight in the Middle East, knowing that you primarily look at the economy, how concerned are you about possible escalation from here and the impact that that could have on energy prices, which we know has been highly problematic for the European economy in years past?
First of all, we see that the world economy is proving to be resilient despite a difficult situation and different geopolitical tensions and conflicts we are currently experiencing. And also the impact on energy prices so far has been quite limited. Obviously, we need to monitor closely all of those developments, but the assessment is that the risks to the economic outlook are now broadly balanced.
You've been in Washington here meeting with lawmakers about the big story that we've been talking about here for months, Mr. Executive Vice President, and just today we saw an important procedural vote pass for funding for Ukraine, Israel, and the Indo-Pac region. You're obviously very concerned about funding for Ukraine. What did you tell lawmakers when you met with them?
Indeed, that was my main message in the meetings on the Hill. And basically, I was emphasizing that from the EU side, we are doing a lot to provide financial, but also military and other kind of support to Ukraine. So far, we have provided support of around 100 billion euros. We now have 50 billion euros Ukraine facility for the 4 years, 2024-2027. We are already disbursing from this facility. So it's important that also other international donors, and first and foremost US, come also with their contribution. And therefore, I'm very much look forward for tomorrow's votes. And hopefully this Ukraine support is being approved. Because what we see is that in a last months, actually, the situation in Ukraine is deteriorating for the lack, especially of military support. We see it both at the front line, and we see it with daily shellings of Ukrainian cities, residential areas, critical infrastructure. So this support is very much needed. I would say the collective West has all the necessary resources to stop Russia, not to allow this shelling to take place. So hopefully this period of undecision and deterring is coming to the end, and we will be able to come with a strong and firm response to Russia, and I would say also to other autocrats around the world, because it's also not only about Ukraine, it's about our collective security.
Well, sir, as you outlined there, the amount that Europe already has contributed to the Ukrainian cause, it's worth pointing out that there is at least a faction of thought here in the United States that thinks Europe is not carrying as much weight as it should be. One of them is the presumptive Republican nominee, former President Donald Trump, posted on social media yesterday, effectively, to summarize his words, saying that Ukrainian survival is more important to Europe than it is to the U.S. So why is Europe not giving more money to help Ukraine? Why can't it equalize or match the money? This is a quote put in by the United States of America. Is there more that Europe could be doing, sir? I wonder what your response would be to Donald Trump?
First of all, facts has never been the strong side of Donald Trump, and it's also, unfortunately, this time the case. So that's why I'm emphasizing so much the financial aid EU has already provided, which is 100 billion euros in all kind of support. The Ukraine facility, which is already in place of 50 billion euros. So the fact is that EU is the largest donor to Ukraine, and we are willing to continue this way, because after all, indeed, it's a war on on European continent. But of course, it also requires solidarity from the broader democratic world, and with EU and US being strategic allies, US support is not only financially very important, but also as a signal of West being united against this Russian aggression.
Of course, Donald Trump's view reflects the view of some Republican members in the House who are voting against this package. I wonder, when you met with lawmakers this week, what was your reception? Did you hear pushback? Did you hear criticism, or were you well received with the lawmakers you met with?
I would say views were definitely varying on this topic, but my point was really to make the case why it's important not only for Ukraine but for entire global security architecture, because what we are seeing is that also other autocrats are seeing if the West is not even able to contain Russia, so they're also having ideas, and the recent Iran attack against Israel is just another manifestation of this. So from that point of view, it's important to stay firm and determined. Another one, indeed, to make this point on the EU's contribution so far, to really show that EU is doing a lot. The EU is actually doing more than the United States. We're happy to continue to do so, but everyone has to contribute.
Well, of course, sir, your conversations here in Washington have not just been limited to lawmakers. You are also here while the IMF World Bank meetings are underway. And I wonder, from an economic lens, what you are hearing in the messaging and what message you are providing about the state of the European economy right now, knowing that for now policy is still tight and there's questions around when it will ease and where the economy will be depending on when that easing actually happens. How are you thinking about the outlook for Europe? As the IMF essentially said, there could be a soft landing, but there are risks here.
Indeed, as I was saying before, actually, the global economy is proving resilient to both current geopolitical tensions and also to the process of disinflation through which we now have to go through. So the expectations for a global growth is of 3.2% of both this year and next. That's IMF's World Economic Outlook. And as regards the EU, we are expecting 0.9% growth this year, 1.7% growth next year. It's somewhat subdued growth right now, one could say, but at the same time, despite a war on the European continent, despite the need to tame high inflation, different disruptions we are facing, EU's economy is nevertheless growing.
I want to ask you about another foreign policy matter that you've been concerned with, and that's China supplying components to Russia and potentially evading sanctions. There's an economic element to this. There's obviously a geopolitical element to it. How big of a problem is this becoming?
That's certainly a cause of concern, and there are two elements. One is circumvention of sanctions, but also another is, in a sense, backfilling of the sanctions, and we are engaged with China on both of those elements. So in a sense, what we are doing, we have what we call high priority battlefield items list, meaning items which we are finding in Ukrainian battlefields, in Russian military equipment. We are tracing the origin of this different kind of components.
Is this lethal weaponry?
Yes, it's Russian military weaponry which is being found on Ukrainian battlefields. And because it's not only about weapons deliveries, there's also many dual-use components. If we talk about semiconductors, all kind of other components. So we're tracing it back where it actually origins, because we must face there's also still quite a few of those components of Western origin which are reaching Russia. So we also need to work with our own companies, both in the EU and US, making sure that they are not engaged in those sanction circumvention. And in the EU, we also have a possibility actually to go after the companies which are knowingly engaging in these kind of activities. We are putting also requirements on no resell to Russia on exports of dual-use items. And we are actually coordinating this work quite a lot with US. We recently also put certain measures against Chinese and Hong Kong companies which are involved in sanctions circumvention by prohibiting EU companies to do any business with them. So there are things which we can do, and it's clear as we are now putting strict sanctions against Russia, EU, US, other players. Russia is looking at the ways to circumvent them, so we need to stay alert, follow the patterns, and to the extent possible close the circumvention and possible loopholes.
Valdis Dombrovskis with the view from the European Commission. We appreciate your making us part of your week here in Washington, and I hope the spring meetings of the IMF continue well for you. Thanks for talking with us
Thank
today
you.
on Bloomberg.
Thank you.